Okay, we're very fortunate to have a wonderful guest speaker who for several years now we were all talking about wanting to get her here. Her name is Janine Ben-Use, and she travels the world, and I'll tell you why. She's a biologist and an innovation consultant, an author of 6 books, including Biomimicry, Innovation Inspired by Nature. In biomimicry, she names an emerging discipline that seeks sustainable solutions by emulating nature's designs and processes. For instance, solar cells that mimic leaves. Janine has received several awards, including a Time Magazine's Hero of the Environment Award and Rachel Carson Environmental Ethics Award, the Lud Brauman, I'm sorry, am I saying that right? Brauman Award for Science, Writing, and Society, and the Barrows and Hines Distinguished Lectureships. In 2009, Janine was honored with a Champion of the Earth Award in Science and Innovation from the United Nations Environment Program. She traveled to Paris to accept the award on Earth Day and participated in a 2-day conference hosted by Business for Environment. An educator at heart, Janine believes that the more people learn from nature's mentors, the more they'll want to protect them. And this is why she writes, speaks, and revels in describing the wild teachers in our midst. So please welcome Janine Ben-Use.
I'm going to sit. And you know, while I'm getting this sitting situation figured out, could you all come closer? I feel like you're so far away. Can you cut, please? Come on closer. I can't rock a didgeridoo like we just heard. I just got this little voice, so. There we go. Fabulous. Thank you. It feels much better. Spence is there. Cameron, who got me my chair. Thank you. So, hello. Hello. Here we are surrounded by teachers. And I don't just mean the ones over there. I mean the ones all around us. Incomparable teacher, this biome. How many people are from Montana who live here? Aren't we lucky? Aren't we incredibly lucky to be surrounded by this kind of beauty and this kind of intelligence and embodied wisdom, right? When Deb asked me to speak here, I said, of course, simply because you do not say no to a rock and roll and soul singer who has moved to your valley. Have you guys heard Joan Zen? Yeah, right. I know. So anything she asks me to do, including like get her snacks during performances, I will do. And Deb, thank you for what you did today for all of us, but also what you've brought, the soul that you've brought into the Bitterroot Valley and environs. It's more than I can say thank you for. So this'll, yeah, it's true. It's true if you guys have heard her and better yet, dance to her. But the other thing is that as I've been following this incredible project and this incredible culture keeping, both here on reservation land and in this new place of culture keeping, it occurred to me that our worlds intersect. And number one, they intersect in the realm of humility. Because I work in a field called biomimicry. And what it is it's the conscious emulation of life's genius. Now this is Western industrial culture finally catching up, by the way. But we are consciously now asking nature's advice about how shall we live here. And so I have a company and a nonprofit of biologists who go and we sit with the people who make our world, and we tell them how nature would do what it is they're trying to do. It's a phenomenally great job for a nature nerd. It's a phenomenally great job. But it begins with quieting human cleverness. That's what it begins with. The other place that our worlds intersect is in mindful attention to the small and exquisite details of our world. When we bring designers, engineers, architects, chemists, material scientists, the people who made everything you're wearing today, everything you drove here or came here with, all our stuff, all of our agricultural fields and our systems, all of those systems that we make, we humans make, there are people behind that who are way back in the design process. Where do they get their ideas? Do they get them from other human technologies? And if so, that's a big echo chamber. So what we do right away is we take them outside, and I would encourage you guys to do this as well. We take them outside, we take them as deep away from every human endeavor that we possibly can. We bring them to Costa Rica and Peru and South Africa and Montana. We take them away. And we bring them very, very close to the natural world. And they come to a workshop like this and they think, what are we going to learn? What are we going to do? And we immediately send them out and we say, sit down for 15 minutes. And I can't tell you how long that is for most people. They don't live in Montana. Sit down for 15 minutes by yourself and observe. And here's the key thing. Listen to the natural world without hunting for the next sound. Because a lot of people go out and they go, what am I going to learn? What is nature going to teach me? You know, they go out hunting for the answer, right? And we say to them, no, just let those lessons come to you. So you can do that yourselves. But it's amazing how that transforms people. That's that first step of quieting human cleverness. So when I come here, when I look and I think about, those of you who drove from Missoula, did you see those Mission Mountains? Aren't they gorgeous at this time of year? Right before the snow flies. When I look at them, I like to know that up there right now, it's closed right now. You can't hike up there right now. Does everybody know what's going on there right now? What's that? White bark pine nuts, something else. Moths, that's right. That's right, cutworms, actually the cutworms. What's happening up there right now is there's a huge migration of cutworm moths and ladybugs. And it's closed so that the grizzlies can climb up there on McDonald Peak and by the gallon grab those ladybugs. Right? By the gallon. They're just eating those ladybugs. And thankfully we've closed that because that's a sacred time and a sacred spot for them. I love knowing that that's going on. I love knowing that this year with all the mushrooms we've had because it's been such a wet year, I love knowing that the mushroom cap is designed to actually bobble on its stalk. Okay, do you know this about mushrooms? It bobbles on its stalk. Now, the reason it does that is because it reproduces itself with spores that are in gills. If you feel underneath the mushroom, you'll feel these gills. There's spores in there. The mushrooms are designed, and they're best, the best reproduction is when there's moisture, when there's rain. So each mushroom has its own, it's called rainbowism. It's got its own sensitivity. And when the right kind of raindrop, the right size raindrop falls on the mushroom cap, that's when it releases its spores. So it actually is designed to respond, to know when it rains, right? There's no waste of water or waste of its spores, right? It's a beautiful thing, right? These are beautiful things. I love knowing that when you go hiking and you see those Solomon seal, that's a kind of flower that is buzz pollinated. Do you know what buzz pollination is? Bees go in, bumblebees go in, they clasp the anthers where the pollen is with their wings, and they emit a particular buzz. For some bees, it's middle C. It's the note middle C. And then, and only then, is the pollen released. Because then it knows that its proper mutualist is there, and that pollen starts to dance and starts to move in vortices with that middle C, and then it jumps over to the bee's body, and the next time the bee goes to the next flower, it releases onto that flower. It's called buzz pollination. This is exquisite competence, exquisite. I love knowing that the first flakes of snow, I live with my partner in the Bitterroot in front of St. Mary's, and we've already had snow there. There's a scientist in Bozeman, a lot of great science out of Montana, by the way. There's a scientist in Bozeman who did a study of the snow in Montana, 70% of the snow in Montana. He went all the way down to the snowflakes. What do you think's in the middle of those snowflakes? What? Speck of dust. That's what we normally think. There's a lot of dust that, up in the clouds, right? A speck of dust will nucleate, right? Will like form, cause ice to crystallize, right? And then it'll snow. In Montana, and all over the world really, but very much in Montana, 70% of the snow has in the middle of it a bacterium. Okay, they're called snow pilots. There's a name for them now. So get this. These bacterium, they're ice nucleating bacterium. Pseudomonas syringae. Spence is like, what is that? And what they do is they've got on their bodies, they have particular little structures on their bodies, and they cause water molecules up in the cloud. The structure on their body is like a template for an ice crystal. And it structures the water molecules so that the water molecules get together and then form ice crystals 4 degrees warmer than normal. It doesn't have to get that cold, right? Not even at freezing temperatures. It basically coaxes an ice crystal into formation. I mean, this is exquisite competence. Now, here's the deal. Ice nucleating bacteria do this on plants. This is what frost damage is. They do this on plants so that it will soften the tissue of the leaf so they can get in. So you know what we do? We genetically engineer them to take away the ice nucleation possibility, and then we spray them on our plants. Well, what happens when those bacterium go up into the clouds? They're not nucleating snow anymore. We have to realize we are in the presence of extreme subtle competence. And we are young. We're only 200,000 years old, and life's been on Earth for 3.8 billion years. So back to humility. Back to quieting human cleverness. Right? I mean, even the large organisms are so subtle. Humpback whale is like an organism, it's like an organism the size of a school bus, or even bigger, who's a ballet dancer when they're feeding, and they feed together. So they go down to the bottom of the ocean, or to the bottom of the bay, wherever they are, right? And they come up, it's called bubble feeding. And as they come up, they're swimming in a giant spiral that's maybe 10, 15 feet across, okay? And as they're doing it, they're blowing bubbles, and they create a cylinder of bubbles. And this cylinder of bubbles becomes a net for krill, which are these tiny little things they eat. And then all of their friends go down, and they come up with their mouths open, and they eat all the krill that's within this cylinder net. And when they're finished fishing, there's no net debris swirling around in the Pacific Gyre. The bubbles just disappear. The turtles swim through, the dolphins swim through. This is subtle. So when we say we want to be more like Mother Earth, I'm serious about the small and large details. The more detailed my knowledge about nature's teachings become, the more immense my respect becomes. So for me, my work is a practice. And I'm just about as, I live basically with my heart full and tears in my eyes all the time because of what I'm learning about this sweet earth and about this intelligent earth. So what we do in biomimicry is, before we design anything or before we decide anything, we work with inventors and we ask the question: how does nature purify water without chlorine? How does nature manage pests without pesticides? How does nature repel water without Teflon? Simple things like that. How does nature farm without losing soil and by actually increasing fertility instead of reducing fertility? How does nature do that? How does nature lasso the sun without heavy metals in solar cells? How does every leaf on all of these trees subtly move to track the sun all day long? How does that happen with water, basically water under pressure? How does a spider make its web with no high heat, no pressure, no toxins, making a silk that's 5 times stronger than steel? We actually say, how does nature do chemistry that is no regrets chemistry? Right? How does nature make every material that you're looking at, every miracle material you're looking at, without any waste? Right? Because when we ask inventors that question, they say, well, it's possible. Tell us, how does it work? And maybe we can do it too, right? So it begins with that humility. And we're learning all kinds of things. So I'll give you a few examples of the technical side of biomimicry, and then I'll talk about what I came here to talk about, which is how would nature create peace? So for instance, we're learning how to comb water out of fog like a small beetle in the Namib desert combs water out of fog, 10 times better than our fog catching nets. There's a young man in Boston who's creating, based on how, he's not harvesting beetles and attaching them to a piece of plastic. That's not what he's doing. He basically asks the beetle, how do you do that? How do those bumps work to pull moisture out of fog so incredibly efficiently? He learned that design, and now he's making self-filling water bottles for the third world that you literally can just hold up in a breeze like this, and humidity begins to gather in, based on how the beetle does it, in the water bottle. There's a new kind of wind farm that is modeled on trout here in Montana. Actually, the studies were done here. So when trout, next time that you're watching a stream and you're at a bridge and you're looking down and you see trout moving in a school, and they're moving upstream in a very fast-moving stream, do you ever wonder why they don't just wear themselves out doing that? Turns out they use very, very little energy. And what they're doing is, as they move, they're basically sort of making a sinuous curve back and forth with their bodies. They wave their bodies. Watch that, right? You can imagine that? Well, now imagine that in the water, what they're doing in the water is creating spirals. They're called vortices in the water. okay? So they throw off a spiral, throw off a spiral, throw off a spiral. Now you'll notice that the trout behind comes right up, and you can't see that spiral, but they can feel it. And that spiral, the ones behind take their bodies and make a sail out of their bodies, like a water sail, and curl around that spiral and get flung upstream. Okay? Now, that's why they're able to do it and make it look easy all day long. They're surfing each other's vortices, right? They use subtle energies. Students at Caltech Poly learned about these fish in one of their classes, and then they went to their other class, which was an engineering class, and they were asked to create a wind farm. Now, normally, a wind farm with big, the big horizontal wind turbines, they take up large amounts of land. And the reason is that in our world, in our conception, we think of the vortices that come off the tips as being a bad thing. We call it turbulence. Life calls it a surfing something for free, right? So what these kids said was, you know what? Why don't we use vertical axis wind turbines, okay, which is a different kind of turbine, and why don't we pack them as closely together as we possibly can, as if they're fish in a school, and see what happens. 10 times more power comes out of that kind of a farm than our regular wind farms. Why? Because the first things start to spin, and they create vortices, and the wind turbines behind start to spin before the wind even hits them. These subtle pieces of wisdom that we're learning from the natural world, it's amazing. It's an amazing, amazing thing. And every single time that I'm asked to go in and to investigate, how does nature take salt out of water? There's a new kind of membrane. In desalination, where we get fresh water out of salt water, what we've been doing is pushing water against the membrane, right, with 900 pounds per square inch of pressure. That's why it takes so much energy. And then we wonder why it clogs. Nature doesn't do that. Nature doesn't push. Nature pulls. So in every single one of your cells right now, there are these hourglass-shaped pores. They look like a little hourglass. And they've got certain charges on them. And what happens is, it's perfect for water molecules. So instead of pushing something against that membrane and pushing water through the pores actually pull the water molecules through in a little conga line. So the water molecules, it's called forward osmosis instead of reverse osmosis. Water is pulled out passively without the use of energy, and the salt stays behind. So these are completely different ways of thinking about how we do everything. Now, basically, we're a biological intelligence organization. We basically pass on biological wisdom. Some of it is technical. Some of it is about that little hourglass. But a whole lot of it is about how organisms interact with one another to create what Lewis Thomas calls the art of interliving. How is it that these ecosystems that you see here knit themselves together into a community that gets more and more and more and more fertile as the years go by, that create more and more and more opportunities for life? How does that work? It's not that we're shipping materials over to that forest right there. We're not getting in with trucks and giving them more carbon, right? They literally are taking endless energy and sunlight, and they're taking the minerals that are in the soil and a few migrants that come in, and that's it. And they're using those materials over and over. Talk about reincarnation. They're reincarnating. The log becomes the mushroom body. The materials in the log become the mushroom. The materials in the mushroom become the vole body or the mouse body. The materials in the mouse become the owl body. It's the same pool of materials. There's no supply chain, right? How does that work? So that's the world of ecology. And it's also the world of peacekeeping. There's something happening in the last 15 years in science that is changing the very way we think about those ecosystems and the way, in turn, we think about our economies. So check this out. Science guesses. Scientists make hypotheses about things. And then they go out trying to find the evidence for those hypotheses. Back in the early 1900s, there were two ecologists, and they had competing hypotheses about how those systems knit themselves together. They were named Gleason and Clemens. Those were their last names. Clemens said, it's a mutual aid society. These organisms are facilitating each other. They're protecting each other from the wind. They're shading each other or exposing each other to the sunlight. They're helping fight each other's pest. It's a mutual aid society. Gleason said, it's mutualisms. It's mutually beneficial relationships. This was in like 1916. Gleason said, no, it's not. It's competition. The only reason those trees are where they are on the landscape is because they're competing for sunlight, they're competing for space, they're competing for water, and they spread out because they're in head-to-head competition with one another. Guess which hypothesis won? Interestingly, we began as a scientific community to search for competition as the reason, as the prime driver in ecosystems. And the math didn't work out. We just kept on doing experiments. We did experiments for more than 50, 60 years because we were determined. Now, when I went to school for forestry. Even then, when I would say something about maybe these plants might be helping each other, I would be called quite derisively a Clemensonian. They'd say, oh, don't be so Clemensonian. When the Cold War came along, the scientific theory of mutual aid was not just, it wasn't just a laughingstock. It was actually seen as dangerous because it was seen sort of as communism, right? So think about this. For so long, we built our entire economy based, you go to business schools, they're talking about the competition. Next time you hear that, and it's a scarcity world, we got to compete for territory. Think of what's happening in our world right now. This is a peace festival. There was a scientific rush to judgment that has recently, starting in the 90s, been turned around. So I'm going to tell you about the new science. There's a man named Ray Calloway, right up in Missoula. If you ever meet him, shake his hand. He is the #1 expert in this field. The field is the field of mutualisms, a study of mutualisms, mutually beneficial relationships, and facilitation, which is one plant helps another plant out for a while, okay, by shading it or blocking it from the wind so it can get going. Facilitation, to facilitate, to help, altruism, to help, or mutualism. So let me give you and as we started in the 90s, as the scientific community started to do the experiments about mutualism, suddenly the math was right. And it turns out that that's what really causes these ecosystems to go. It's not that competition between like elk over a female, that happens. I'm talking about competition with species A and species B. Different species competing against one another. It's too much energy. It's too much energy to be in head-to-head competition. Actually, if you hook up in a mutualism, you're both likely to make the most of your very limited habitat. Gardeners know this. Companion planting. We know this, right? I'm looking at you, Janice. So let me give you some examples. Next time you're walking in a forest, let me tell you what we now know. Most terrestrial plants have partners called mycorrhizal fungi. They're fungi. You know the mushrooms you see? Underneath, there's a cobweb of fungi that go all the way through the soil. If you dig down and you see that stuff that looks like Halloween cobwebs, that's a living organism, okay? It's a mycorrhizal fungi. Now, we understand that. We know that the plant gets sunlight, right? And takes it and fixes it with carbon dioxide and makes sugars and starches and cellulose. If we radio tag that, which is how we learned this, by the way, we said, what is the fate of that sugar molecule? Where does that go? And you watch it, and it goes down this tree, out, and through the soil, and it winds up in a shrub or a flower somewhere else. Somewhere, it's not that it's a related tree that it's handing that carbon to. It's a completely different species. So where's the competition? So here's a tree up here that's photosynthesizing, doing a lot of work, creating a sugar, and that sugar winds up in a trillium, half an acre away. What the heck is going on here? So people like Suzanne Simard from Vancouver, Peter Kennedy, Ray Calloway, these people who are now studying this, Jennifer Rudgkins, they finally are realizing that it's not just that this fungus and this tree have a relationship, but that the fungus, the trees are actually connected to one another. Their roots go out, fungus wraps around the roots, it goes and it wraps around the roots of another tree or shrub. It goes out, it wraps around she calls it the wood wide web. Now here's the blowaway. Here's the blowaway. Now that we know this is happening, they're not just exchanging carbon with each other. They're not just exchanging sugars. They're exchanging nitrogen with each other. They're exchanging water with each other. If it's dry over in that part of the forest, water comes from over there. When this tree gets hit by a caterpillar and it needs to build up its defenses, it sends an alarm, it builds up its defenses, but it's getting eaten. Okay, while it's getting eaten, it sends an alarm signal way across the forest to trees that it's not even related to and says, caterpillars in the neighborhood. What is going on? It doesn't look like competition anymore, right? Now, this is a really kind of a bombshell, bad metaphor, but in the scientific community, it really does blow people's minds. Because if you grew up like Laura and I did in the forestry department and you were told about how these trees are competing, now you're being told plant trees closer together. So plant trees, if you plant trees near a, like in a clear cut, plant them near a stump. Put the trees right next to the stump. The mother tree, it's called, right? So that the fungus, because the fungus is there, and it'll inoculate them. What about our crop plants? Our crop plants used to have, if you go into most industrial croplands now and you dig down, you will not find these fungus. Why? Because we open nitrogen and phosphorus and we put fertilizer down. Now remember, the original bargain was between the fungus and the plant. The fungus gave the plant phosphorus. That's what they do. Plants can't get their own phosphorus. That's why we have to give it to them. They can't, it's very difficult for them to get it. But fungus gives it to them. And the tree, or the plant, gives the fungus sugars because they're under the ground. They can't photosynthesize. That's the original bargain. When we open phosphorus fertilizer and we put it on crops, we tell the fungus, you're not needed. You're not needed for, but what we lose is the transfer of alarm signals, the transfer of water, the transfer of nitrogen and carbon. Life is subtle. Life is subtle. And it's in conversation. It's in intimate conversation. So as humans, I see us as this very young species who's trying to figure out. We've been interrupting the conversation for far too long. We've been interrupting the flow, right? To get as a participant to realize, and this is the other place our worlds intersect, is that there is no difference between us and the rest of the natural world. We really do have to understand that we need to become a participant right in the middle of this conversation, not interrupting it. We actually have to learn how to be in this flow. And that means we have to quiet our cleverness. And that means we have to learn a whole lot more about what's going on. So let me give you some more examples of mutualisms. Here's another one. And this is happening right now with ponderosa pine. The way we figured it out, there are always these mysteries in science. The scientists in Berkeley figured this one out. And it's amazing, they just figured it out. This has been going on forever. I don't know why, we didn't know this, but here it is. So they looked at rainforests and they said, okay, during the rainy season, we can understand that the trees are photosynthesizing. They're taking in water, they're letting water vapor go, they're creating clouds above them, and they're building sugars. But in the dry season, most plants sort of slow that down. But the scientists looked and said, oh my goodness, there's still a lot of clouds above these trees, even in the dry season. Where are they getting their water? This is long after the rainforest, the rains have stopped falling. Where are they getting their water? We know that the rainforest soils are very, very thin, right? And all the water leaches right out. Where is this mysterious source of water and clouds coming from? So let's go to the rainforest. They went in. Yep, shallow roots, shallow roots. Oh, wait a minute. Here's a shrub. It's got a really deep taproot. So they started to study these deep-rooted taproots, right? And what they found was, now which way does water go in a plant? Water goes into the soil, right? And the roots take it, and they pull it up to the leaves, right? What they found was exactly the opposite. That during the rainy season, the plant would take as much water as it needed, and then it would take water from the top of the soil and it would push it down the root. Did you know this happens? Happens everywhere. Down the root and out into the soil. It's called hydraulic redistribution. It pushes the water down the root, out into the soil. It banks it. When it gets dry, that deep-rooted taproot shrub pulls the water into its root, pulls it up, puts it out onto its shallow roots and out into the soil, so that all the trees and shrubs around it can drink that water. Now, where did this competition thing come from? And why are we only now realizing these mutualisms? The reason I'm talking about this is not because it's a scientific curiosity. It's because it's the way the world works. We've been told that it is in our nature to compete, to war, to fight against one another, to take what is ours and hold on to it against others, to not share. We've been told this so deeply. We go home in our homes and in our spiritual practice, and of course, we think differently. But when we go out into the world, all of a sudden we think, well, you know what? It's how the economy works. This is really how politics works. This is the real world. And the subtle message has been, yes, indeed, and it's the way nature works. How many of you think of nature as red in tooth and claw? You turn on the TV and you see programs about predatory animals, right? Think about all the negative interactions that you hear about in nature, the things that are sensational, the predators, the parasites, right? The killing, this is the competition for females. It's such a small, those negative interactions, antagonistic interactions, are such a small part of the actual science, of actually what knits together, what drives ecosystems to persist. So what happened was when science began to look at the positive interactions instead of the negative interactions, began to look for them, they found them everywhere. So I collect these because I think they're fascinating, because they tell me don't be so sure that you know how the real world works. And of course we are part of that real world, right? So here's another one. Even things we thought we were taught were competition are now being seen as, wow, maybe they're mutualists. So for instance, two fish in the coral reef, they're right next to each other and they're eating the same eelgrass. They're two different species. As scientists, we say, why don't they move apart? Why are they right next to each other? I mean, why be in that kind of competition? And they don't seem to be under any stress whatsoever. And yet they're competing for the same eelgrass. Study them a little longer, and you realize they're actually mutualists. Why? Because they're all peeing and pooping. And when they pee and poop, they fertilize the eelgrass. So if you hang out with the other fish that's eating the eelgrass, you actually get this beautiful dividend, right, of nutrient from your neighbor. So in the natural world, what it's being called is, we used to think that these organisms divvied up the pie, but now we understand they just make more pie. Now that, right? Okay, so, and this is the real world. This is the real, go home and tell people this is the real world. This is the real world. Here's another one. For years, if you go into the rainforest, you got me on all these rainforest case studies. I was talking to somebody, Janice, at lunch about the rainforest. You look up into the branches of the rainforest and you see all these air plants, the bromeliads, okay? And you see the same thing around here when you see all those beautiful lichens up there and all. Well, scientists, when I went to school, I was told that those plants up there are freeloaders. They're freeloaders. They're parasites. Basically what's happening is they're not giving the tree anything, is what we were told. They're taking up space on the tree. Not only that, but as they die, their leaves build soil and the branches get heavy and then the branches break off. Here's the riddle. Why would the tree put up with that? Why didn't it evolve some way to get rid of those air plants? So a woman scientist, I just met her in Utah, Salt Lake City, about 10, 15 years ago. Remember when those like canopy things, they're like observation decks that you can walk now around the canopy, and people climb up into the canopy? We never did that before. Well, when she went up there, she started to do studies. Guess what she found? She dug, it doesn't take much. She dug into the soil under the air plants, this layer of soil, and guess what? The branches of the tree were putting their roots up into the soil. It's not a parasitic relationship, it's a mutualism. So it's really interesting to me to watch. I collect these. I collect these like switches, right? From the parasites to yeah. What? What's How long has it been? It has? Okay. I have to wrap it up. Sorry about this, man. I'm just like, I added more examples because of Janice. Anyway, all right. So we got to wrap this up. But you see what I'm saying? It really does pay, I think, for us to regard what biomimicry is. It's regarding the natural world. It's seeing, regard, the French, see again. See the natural world in a new way. Next time you go out, sit down. Listen without hunting for the next sound. Actually try to imagine that cobweb, that wood wide web, and all that exchange, all those ripples of beneficence. There's something going on here that's much more, much richer than our own ideas about our economic system. That's the thing we made up. The thing that we're actually embedded in and that we're a part of relies on, I'll say it, mutual aid. I'm not afraid of being called Clemensonian anymore. So please, not only understand that, also understand that you are a part of that. We live on this competent planet. You are all a part of it. You too, your true nature is a mutualistic nature. We don't have to go beyond our natures or evolve in some sort of a way as the animals that we are. We do better in partnership. Evolution is actually now believed to be perhaps selecting on how good you are as partners. It's not how good you are as competitors, as we've been taught for a long time. So take heart. And it's this kind of coming together of cultures that will help us shake off these old myths, the stories that enslave us. The real story is the one that's all around you and the one that you feel most deeply during your practice. Please, please, despite what the world does, keep a hold of that story and keep enlarging it so that it becomes known by all and practiced by all. Thank you.
Happy and proud to introduce our next performance, which we've all been waiting for. The internationally famous Ewam is here. He is considered to be the ambassador of Tibetan music. He was born in Tibet, but following the Chinese invasion in 1949 or 50, his family moved to India, where he studied meditation and Buddhist philosophy. He spent 11 years as a monk, including 4 years as a hermit meditating in the Himalaya foothills under the guidance of the Dalai Lama. He is a self-taught musician, and his expression springs from his emotions in life, experienced traveling the world as a Tibetan nomad. In 1986, he emigrated to Australia, where he first performed, and his recordings achieved bestseller status. Ewam is best known for his collaborations with Kitaro, including performances on their Grammy-nominated Enchanted Evening and Mandala albums. He's received international acclaim for his live performances with Philip Glass, Paul Winter, Laurie Anderson, Paul Simon, Natalie Merchant, Carlos Nakai, and many, many more. He's performed with Fish and played with many, many artists and Grammy Award-winning CDs. and he's decided to come and grace you with his performance today. So we ask that everyone come closer. If you'd like to come and listen to the flute and have a nice meditative, concentrated experience, his flute playing is very soft and gentle, and so we hope that everyone will be quiet a little bit and sit and gather around close and enjoy this very moving spiritual experience. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see someone of this nature. So please come close and enjoy. And we ask that if you're near the stage, that everyone be a little bit quiet so that he can perform. And afterwards, he's going to sign some CDs, sell, and some books, and autograph them for you in the Tibetan tent next to me. So thank you so much for coming, and we hope that you'll enjoy his performance. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Nawang Ketchog.
May peace prevail in the heart of humanity. May all be kind to each other. May all be kind to each other. May all be kind to each other. Hi, everyone. How are you doing? What a wonderful day, huh? I love to dedicate today's my performance for the long life of and for the great activities of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and all the great masters on this earth. And especially in this world, I would also like to dedicate for the long life of Tugu Sangha Rinpoche, who is sitting there, for his long life, and Lama Wangmo and Lama Tsomo of these communities, Lama, so for their long life and for their great activities. And I hope you can enjoy with everything here. And may all be kind to each other is a prayer I've been saying for 20-something years. And few years ago, 10 of the Nobel Peace Prize winners, including His Holiness Dalai Lama, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and Rigoberta Menchutum from Guatemala, Oscar Arias, and also Jody William from United States, Betty William from Ireland. So they all endorse this phrase, may all be kind to each other. So I want to say this us together. May all be kind to each other. 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 of course, you can see this is a Native American flute, and the only difference is there's a Buddha head. It decided a little bit adopt the Buddha's peacefulness within. If you see the face, it has such a serene feeling. So that's why I put it this. And one Native American 3-generation flute maker came to my concert, and he liked it and invited me next day for a breakfast. And then he gave me a bunch of flute. And I've been playing his flute, especially this one. So he's passed away, but his name is John Little Hawk. So he passed away, but his flute stays with me, and I play all over the world. I hope you will enjoy this. Thank you. Next one, you heard the lady play the didgeridoo, the Australian Aborigine. I play this too, but I'm going to do a chant that is Tibetan traditional chant. It sounds like a didgeridoo, just coming from the throat. This throat is like the pipe. So I will see that this will be a very different experience for you. But I will chant a poem by Shantideva, which happens to be most favorite of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And I'm sure it's also most favorite of Tugu Sangha Rinpoche. It's a universal compassion prayer. Goes like this. For as long as space endures, for as long as sentient beings are there, may I remain until then and solve the suffering of other beings. In Tibetan, Chisi Namka Nebatang, Doa Chisi Negyupa, Tisi Tani Negyune, Doe Donge Sevasho. And I will combine the Mongolian overtone chanting with Tibetan overtone chanting. Does it sound like a didgeridoo? Tibetans been chanting, actually the monks chant for 1,000 years at least. But I'm an ex-monk, naughty ex-monk. So, but I learned this chanting from a chant master. So this is ocarina, origin of the flute. So very small one. So it's very different sound, okay? I hope you enjoy. This is also ocarina. It's a double reed ocarina. I used to have a Mayan ocarina similar to this. It's a very beautiful clay made, but this I found somewhere made out of woods. But anyway, it gives kind of similar feel. By the way, this last song I would like to dedicate for the Tibetan nomads in Tibet. I'm from a Tibetan nomad background. And what's happening in Tibet is the Chinese government decided to destroy all the nomads. They've taken away all the yaks herds and put them into a small rooms in the different towns, and the nomads are dying today. So I don't have a choice but speak out for the Tibetan nomads. And they are dying. They are the foundation of Tibetan culture. So please try to help for the survival of these Tibetan nomads. Thank you. Thank you so much. One last song. This is a Japanese flute. There's a beautiful Japanese people here. I hope some of you here. Yeah. This is a not real Japanese flute, but I bought in Japan where Kitaro lives. Kitaro is my one of best friend in the music world. So I will try to play a Japanese flute for you. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you. And our wonderful sound guy, he was so wonderful. Thank you. And thank you, Deborah. Thank you so much.
Okay, don't go anywhere. Nawang Ketchog is going to sign some CDs for you and books. And we'd like to welcome Tulku Sangak Rinpoche to the stage, the creator and founder of the Garden of 1,000 Buddhas. And he would like to offer some teaching and advice and wonderful way to listen to one of these wonderful Tibetans. And please welcome Tulku Sangak Rinpoche to come speak with you. And we're looking for, oh, here he is. Here he is. We have a wonderful Tibetan friend of ours, Karma Tensum from the Tibetan Children's Education Foundation, is coming to help to translate for Tulku Sangak Rinpoche. Okay, once again, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Tulku Sangak Rinpoche, the creator of the Garden of 1,000 Buddhas, with Karma Tensum from Tibetan Children's Education Foundation.
Lasso ini ta ini trengaranze ini Buddha garden ge ini tangaranze ini misek ini shibitze go de zone lo jokorwaki ini kapte ini cheranzo de ini duken zomba tamchi ini changmala ini ngaso tujeche tahideles shoyens.
To begin with, Rinpoche wants to greet you. He wants to thank you. He wants to say that it's such a pleasure to have everyone here as we celebrate the 10th Peace Festival here at Ewam.
Ini ta ngaranze ini datering aso tela ini ngola ini ngaranze ini sungxie nang ke ina yang re de nang yin tene ta ngaranzo go rorcha ini dramindra ini ta ngaranzo pe tene ngaso ini chik ta ngaso chik ini shiviki zego mangboji ngola nang song tene tsangmaga ini tuji chese mixe ngarang pe gabushira chons.
Also, Rinpoche would like to thank all the musicians, the speakers, the artists who performed today with the core theme of peace and creating peace. And so Rinpoche wants to thank everyone for participating.
Hola, so ini ta trained mise ke ngaranze shivaki zego. Ini ngato zambuleng ini ngaranzo ini ta jerdene ngaranzo tamchi ta ngazo ini chik sharno mrekta midra mangbo yore tenen zambuleng chik ngaranzo ini chulok tang kedang teni yegela sopape mindraba ini mangbo chi yore ini ta ka dorna ta ngaranzo ka tamje Dona teni ngaranzo ge ji ene dewa dong dongam mendong ke yimbate sama teni ngaso jikchong re de yores.
And Rinpoche says that today, as we gather here to celebrate peace, he does it with the realization that in this beautiful universe, we all have diverse backgrounds as far as our race is concerned, culture is concerned, color is concerned. So there is this wonderful diversity within the universe. Having said it, there is one thing that binds us all together and brings it a common theme, and that is that everyone wants happiness.
Laso ini ta te tawe teni chengaranzo ge dobate ini ngaso devan doba jikchong yimba las yang ngaranzo la ini ta nang pension 그 직 애니 직 요자당 가르바던데 망보 연구요래 되는 잠랭게 돌아 이니 뒤딱버리지요. 메대바들이야 망보 용되고 요레스.
And he says, although all of us seek happiness, this is also a fact of life that all of us struggle with our own challenges. This is also equally true that the world in which we live in is an imperfect world. It is a world of strifes, combats, challenges. That is the world that we live in.
허나서다 된리게 되는 가서 니급텔라스 다 ngaran 저게 디 강을 탐지 세비 탭데 가르쳐 고고 요랬으나 애니 다 nga츠 애니 지당게 되는 ngaran 저게 애니 고도돼서 토르 땅야 시외게 튼제 ngazo 참아 냠라 튼비게 잘라 애니 다그 대소 탐지 흘레적도 서로 가서 늦제 애니 다 ngaranso 그 참하게 지금 가서 배전제야. 근데 최연잠벌은 고력 승급이나 한다. 나 나은 거 지금 ngaranso 그 대지게 예자 공부이나 한다. 근데 지금 가서 냠들어야 돼. 시작해 침보요레스.
And so, when we talk about these challenges, we also talk about how to overcome them. And in order to overcome them, according to Rinpoche, we have to all be united in working together. Whether it is working for a peaceful environment for our children, or whether it's working towards internal personal peace within each of ourselves, there has to be a continuous striving towards making the world a better place.
얘네 다 ngaranso 그 배나 얘네 ngaranso 그 잠벌랭게 얘네 다 ngaranso 그 얘네 다 골라 찌기 토드 ngazo 참만 내 요레스
양주 송다
잠벌랭 골라 사이 골라 잠벌랭 ngazo 골라 찌기 토라 내 요레스.
And Rinpoche says that we all live in this one globe, in this one human globe we live in.
얘네 네 얘네 다다 ngaranso 그 얘네 다데 마체 마옹빠게 ngazo 머럽니 머럽고 파도 내게 토라 얘네 ngazo 그 내야당 소화째야 돼. 얘네 ngaranso 얘네 다 ngazo 그 땜지도 차되고 요레스.
And this planet is not just something that we live in at the present, but this is something that we are going to leave for all generations in the future also.
전에 선상 전에 ngazo게 ngazo 머럽 지마 탐제 라양 얘네 고요 장보 집중야 얘네 십대 중야 얘네 ngaranso 지보 용약 대 ngaranso라 얘네 랭게지 차데 요레스.
And he says it is our responsibility, the responsibility of the present generation, to make sure that we leave for future generations a planet that has good environment, a planet that is peaceful. That is the duty of each of us to leave towards posterity.
전에지 인상 얘네 되게 토라 얘네 가서 민망부 그 대상 샘고 제거 요래 닐 토라 얘네 민망부 그 되게 토라 지금 가서 얘네 시행당 전에게 토라 다 지금 알아서 그 펜비 주체 망부 찍기 때문에 학고고 요래 내라 되네 알아서 그 승급 제약이 얘네 다 알아서 그 지금 얘네 랭겐 전에게 토라 빼도 제서 다 가서 지인겐지 지인겐 코르 근데 제때는 알아서 그 난거 요래. 그래서 탐지 되는 배면서 바탕 ngaranso 그 직에네 예수야랑 시아당 대 탐지라 에네 ngaranso 그 직파 에네 투몽 그 토라 시바제야 되는 데라 같이 뭐지 도스.
And Rinpoche says he is aware that, as far as leaving the world a better place for all future, he says great thinkers, world leaders, they are all focused on this core issue, since it's a very important issue. And he says, from our angle also, we bring a unique perspective as to how we can leave a more peaceful world for future generations also.
아니 대마세 얘네 다다 ngaranso 게 얘네 다다 직당 토라 강연 망보요래 머레레게 셈비나라 뇨다 망보요래 강연 망보요레스.
And he says, as he reiterated before, the world is full of problems, not only for the world, within each individual, within each of us, he says, we ourselves are full of strife.
다 대탐치 나란 속에 얘네 강어르대 속에 주제 가리인 강어르대서 새로하게 탑 가려요. 어다 되게 토라 얘네 나란 속에 얘네 초용의 직 얘네 삼로 땅이야. 되게 토니 심조제야. 되게 토니 편수 고도 빼야 돼. 얘네 개지 못이라고 그랬어.
And in our way of thinking, we try to remove our sufferings by actually trying to analyze. When we talk about inner strife within each person, we try to analyze what is the cause of our sufferings. And if you're able to identify them, then work towards resolving them. And if we can bring this analytical approach to a bigger canvas, maybe it's a good starting point.
홀라서 든지지 손장 얘네 다 나란조 미세게 얘네 나란조 낭바 선지비게 토를 이나양 조되네 나란조 얘네 셈라 시대중야 얘네 랑게 되네 셈지 톡 다 나란조 직 얘네 가레서 거래 얘네 녀몽바 대소 탐지 직 가서 봐 얘네 조르제제네 조되네 랑 셈기 시대중야게 얘네 탑 망보지 되네 산지기 송여버레스.
And as far as Mahayana Buddhism is concerned, we focus a lot on trying to acquire a peaceful mind. That is one of the core beliefs, and that is one of the main endeavors. And there are many teachings by the Buddha focused specifically on this very important topic.
Ene miserge ngaransuge kanger mambuchi yor ngebe tola ra maleba nang semje samlo chedang ge toni ene yongde ge yoba dela yang samlo ene che ngaransuge lobsu ge juni kanger deso sertobachi ene tabla mambo yores.
And in our way of thinking, in the Buddhist way of thinking, we also realize that a lot of the problems we face are not external. A lot of our miseries, our sorrows stem from inside. And then, just as that is true, it is equally true that in our Dharma, there are also many, many advices on how you can cure your own inner sufferings.
알았어. 근데 손상 얘네 가서 얘네 다다드네 자와rum부치게요. 얘네 되게 토라 얘네 가서 되는 잠불라인라 롭던 망보지 낭제 얘네 다당가라 저 잠불라인라 되네 초망보지 그 토라 얘네 지 팬도 망보 용거 요래 될때는 잠라인 시디기 얘네 증다드네요 망보 예요레스.
And leading the field in this way of life is none other than His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who has traveled across the world teaching this very thing of trying to bring about inner peace within each of us. And for this, he has been lauded, he has been recognized, as the principal teacher of bringing about inner peace.
올라서 다 된다베더니 지 상지게 에네 남바 상지비 추용나라 여바 마세 대소 탐지 응니 기타 빼도 쳐서 에네 랑가 셈토라 냠네 제제네 빼나 당 아랑 따부지레 차이야나 강에 망보 직다 아랑서 최고요 최발에 뭐마 에네 아랑서 에네 텔라 데비 값서 드린 아랑 벌 데비 값서 다 된리기 니서고 토니 땡 아랑서 다 빼더니 다 에네 된리기 다 빼더 니서고 토라 드니 응니 그 냠네 대소 드니 빼 편도 첨부 용거 여봐 드니 아랑 그 할람 직 가서 셈바겠더니 직 가서 받쳤더니 여자니 직 유도 땅 통고 여봐 드니 직 가서 에네 내시 빼면서 봐 땜보여.
And Rinpoche says, from his own personal experience, from his life experience, he can vouch and say how important the mental conditioning, the mental learning, the mental education is important, because he says in his own life, he faced so much physical challenges, but because of the mental training, he was able to cope so much better with these external challenges.
가인스나타 대등 아란데네 로 춘총 값서 데네 로 죽섬 기운이라고 나나 데네 아란데네 정간나라 주버래 야나 디 값서 애니 ngaranzo 그 찍가 수파 가르세 애니 된다고 다지 애니 응원이기다 아니 다 강가래당 된나 이게 다 빼듯해서 된다고 찍 애니 동아리세고 말해 다 된래게 되니 찍 나라 애니 ngaranzo 애니 다 낭부이게 찍 가서 라마 조봉 ngaranzo 다 빼듯해서 라마 돼서 그 가딩라 때니 되니 찍 샘런 주도던데 당제 애니 지금 아주 서로한다고데 배는 녀비 감라고니 근데 지금 파 애니 턴제 애니 지금 아주 은이게 지금 아주 시와당 대완라고 배는 되는 아주 드리기 돌지 하람 되는 신감라 해봐 따분라고 되는 지금 배는 서로기 돌은 주도 되는 용투도 되는 성장 되는 아랑 그배 샘제 땡니 딱 은이게 되는 열라고 라 말해봐 랑게 샘도니 조주 접주여봐 접주 당기여봐대
And he says, Rinpoche says when he was only about 13 years old, he got imprisoned. And when he was put in prison, the first realization, of course, is of all the discomforts that one would face there. But then due to the blessings of the teachers, the masters, in whose presence he happened to be, he was slowly able to change his mental attitude to such an extent that he was at some level able to transform the sufferings in that prison state almost to a realm of paradise in his own mental state. And so having undergone that personal experience, he can say with a degree of confidence that it is your mind that is more responsible for your well-being than your external conditions.
Tene tena ye tene ngaran zogo tingsang ene zambulenge chik ngazo ene ta ene tsereg kheba deso yinayang dra ene ngaran zogo chik ene tena yenge ta semkham ge rikpa ge kheba deso ge yang tenra wo ge tablam mangbo chi ore miserge 다 치지 가서 그 주제다 코욕 토를 때니 주주 땅야 라소과 근데 그 탑란 망고지도가 대소 담지 가서 편지 되네 가서 빼리제나 얘는 잠불랭 가란서 지금이 얘네 찔러지 가란서 그 힘들도 토야게 얘네 레와 첨보요래 상고도스.
And so Rinpoche says if we combine whatever we know about human behavior, human conditioning, together with it, if we get the resources of all the wonderful scientists, neurologists that are attempting to study the human consciousness, and together with it, we have these wonderful people working in the field of environment, which is trying to make a world a better place. If these resources are all combined together, we have optimism.
나저 되네 샤초당 되네 늪촉 되네 ngaranzo pe 폴드 중위기 얘네 가서 희연돼서 뭐저제야 얘네 대나게 다 펜스 드머제야 냠용 빼리제야기 되네 가서 지 망신다고지 되네 양 조고도스 되네 성장 되네 ngaranzo 그 당고 되네 시비가 코요지 주양 제도 되네 ene buddha guarding singende ngotsobayins.
And he says, so the thought is this: if we can combine the wisdoms of the East as well as the wisdoms of the West and try and merge together, find a common platform to work together, to bring about peace, to bring about making the world a better place, he says that is so close to his heart. And he says it is indeed with this motivation that Rinpoche worked to bring together this peace garden, to bring about this peace festival, and so that is the motivation in which Ewam was founded.
Tene miserge ta ngarang legate ine ta ngaranzo ine ta chine namga sanji pagchik ine lamega menji sonza ine ngaranzo go petkesero zogo tene ngazo karsena ine chik semji chik ngazo ta kangneredang ine nyogradaso severjeage ta degi tol zogo ngarang lengeja chagyores.
And he says, as a Buddhist spiritual master, it is both his privilege as well as his responsibility to try and focus on inner peace and how he can help people around him achieve some measure of inner peace, just as he learned it himself.
Nene di tata ngarang ke tsar ki ni xeban ra wo ji mayin ba. Ene ngarang zo ge di nga zo pe de chesere ene ta zo ngarang zo ge yang tsur ene den den ra wo shu shen ra wo ji yina. Tene shen de tsur ta nga zo kar sa ene ta mixer ke ta ji nga zo men ke dongbon ra ji yina. Ta nga zo long ba yen da ne tsur tene yang nga zo America sa da wo den den shu do den den shu za wa de sar zo. De ge drive de je ne yang ka sa kala pa chip no do. 대인라고지 전에 되는 알아는 쪽 되나 미세게 다 빼드겠어요. 가서 에네 된듯이 다 빼드겠어요. 지 에네 다 거의 약보지 줘야 제도 되는 알아는 되나 에네 다 비다 같은 resilience.
And Rinpoche hopes that his words, his work here, is not something that is fleeting or that is just concentrated on one day's celebration. He gave the analogy of planting a medicinal tree. The wisdom, what he's trying to create, he compares it to planting a medicinal tree that he hopes will grow, that he hopes will branch out, that he hopes will spread. That is his prayer today.
올라서 된데 선상 얘네 가란 저거 미세게 지 가서 가르서라 다지 밑임성 얘네 지 통야당 퇴야당 얘네 지 가란 저거 샘비게 또 돌아야 지 가서야 초와 때토야 얘네 미세게 다 가란 저거 빼는 대나이 퇴삼제야 근데 된데 돌다 다당 가란 저거 얘네 지 가서 다 부섬 소바지야 얘네 다 중요하게 제도 대지 제네 다다다 할람 론들 다 뺏어서 할람 가로지 살로고요 다 대빼 미스바 대 대가 체랑서 망복 로저제오레 망복 갈레자오레 에범데서 다 베네다 가서 지당 그때다 망치와 접로고요 대럽빼 미스바더니 참말라더니 가서 투지체 쉬야인스.
In the creation of this sacred place, this garden of 1,000 Buddhas, Rinpoche wants to acknowledge with gratitude the help of so many people, from volunteers to funders to gardeners. So many people have worked together over so many years to create what we have today, something that you can visually enjoy, the sounds of peace that you can hear. And he wants to take this opportunity today to thank everyone involved in the creation of Ewam, which Rinpoche feels is now nearing completion.
이내양 다당가 다롱을 주비하라 리가 망고도 되니 체랑 속에 애니 다 애니 문투지네 되니 가랑 속에 되소라 지금 아주 애니 제와낭 통회 로바낭 통회 애니 되소라 다 빼게 소속에 두갑든지 영해요나 애니 문투지네 되니 가랑 속에 대낭로낭 되니 양 먹고셔야인스.
And so he says the work is nearly complete but not completely complete. And so he wants to invite everyone. He wants to request you to take part. You can take part in any way, any form that you can, but Rinpoche takes this opportunity to say, please help in the completion of this wonderful project.
애니 대마세 당 가랑 속에 직결 팬바게 제도 당 가랑 속에 대자오 제게 다 징가랑 속에 애니 대지 애니 다당 가랑 속에 다 댄섬데 찍고 많이 봐. 당 가랑 속에 다 소강이 야고시 잡제. 애니 대랑 가랑 속에 중마. 애니 가서 빼나 당 가서 애니 가던냠나 지에 토비야. 애니 때 솔로 빼도 저서 가랑 속 직된 반라고 직된 토이나 직 당 가랑 속에 솔로 빼 애니 가르침보지에 때는 가서 때 솔로 장사 잡이야 이나양라. 얘네 쟁가서 미세게 쟁가서 지에가르 같은 데 이나ян다 속바 소야 이나 때는 된다고 빼는 가서 얘네 당 가서 빼듯이 스티문고 토게 얘네 쟁가서 얘네 드네서 야고 제토비하게 다 찔링 침직 조야게 다당에 때네 다롱 차게요 다때 다다 건조게 되는데니 마 다다 얘네 지당 애왕고 다다 잡라 난 거여서래 띵에 다다 체런 나면 미세 되지 얘네 양 가서 현도죠.
Right, and then apart from this beautiful garden, Rinpoche says he also wants to take this opportunity today to sort of announce that he has this vision. It's in fact more than a vision, it's a plan. And the plan is to have a wonderful assembly hall, a meeting place to be constructed right here in Ewam so that, we have a wonderful facility to get together, whether it is for a religious practice or whether it is something completely removed like a wedding or a celebration. So he's working towards it, and he wants to take this platform today to announce that he has this vision and this plan to create an assembly hall right here at Ewam.
ene misega ngaran sogotini shiwigita ledon mamboji penada train ngaran sogotini koyok sungkyog thola misega tene kalop na so denrawo ngatsu mamboji penne mise tari tene mongrena ge thoni ene ngaso khyeong mamboji ge tene nyamnyong tene song tinga pe misba gawo chong denrawo chene tene ngatsun zamlen koyok lo pa perche ene ngaran so tris che thomna te khane yapomin dos.
And especially Rinpoche wants to focus on today being a day of peace, a celebration and a bringing of awareness of peace. He thoroughly enjoyed that we had all these speakers focus on the theme of peace. He thinks that Montana is such a beautiful place to start off this wonderful mission to bring world peace. And in his consciousness, he's going to hope and pray that it spreads throughout the world.
얘네 대마세 다 ngaran zogo chi chi ngaran zogo hibdik koyok tunya mase nang ge tene nga ta mi sosu gu jula hiwa jamba zewa dine penzu ningge de so tamji ta nga zo nang ge mangjires.
And he says, just as we concentrate, just as the speakers talk about protecting this beautiful external environment, Rinpoche wants to encourage you. No, he wants to reinforce you this concept of inculcating peace within you, to try and bring that peace, to bring that love, to bring that compassion that is the potential of each of you.
Oh yeah. Te tamji ngaran zogo ene zabi nga zogo semge nana
And he says, we absolutely have this potential. The beautiful thing is this, each one of us, that seed, that potential for love, for compassion, for peace, it's inherent in each of us.
Berna, ngaso longba tongba jele ngara lamla longba tongba jele lemna. Ani tarngu jele meji tona, ya ta meji lepso sane ngaso semno lamsa gawa jegrawas.
Just to give you one example, if he's walking on a lonely path by himself and he sees another person coming, almost instinctively, he feels a joy that it's another human being that he's about to meet.
Oh, de tamji rangin ge lenji ge dene jamba tang, zewa tang, ene pensun ge dene tak yewo yoba ge dene taksen re dos.
And so that sort of feeling is a proof that it's in this love, this compassion is instinctive, it's inherent in each of us.
Da nauni nga so pe tene deso tamji pa ani rangyin ge zewa de ya tene nga so sidon dang ene ji rangyin ge pe na pensun ji karasa rangke yenphang ge ene ji samho de so ge nyora mangbo zu tene nga so pe ke so pensun garwa zu pensun ji nga so karasa gro ko ta je ge ji la chado rensem tene tene ngaran so pe ene nyora chungchong mangbo ge tene chenbo ji pa zu tene ngaran so ge ji jigin de pala jig tene ngaran so ge ji ta de jig te mebacha rang nang na rang lenji ge dewa de pala tene nga so ge ju de chok ro bas tene di ngaran so ge pe ne zo ju japni ene nga so zamlen hide yong ya ene te na ge pe de kesere ene ta tamji ge thol pe de kesere rang ge ji ene sem기 줄이업에 잠닝게 돼서 담게 야 공도 페토비하게 얘네 장막은 배전하러나스.
And he says the problem is this, that although we have these wonderful inherent qualities, our problem starts when politics, when rivalry, when little jealousies and greed get the better of all those instincts, human values, which is inherent in each of us. So he says that's when instead of love, compassion, you begin to have all these dirty things that bring you so much suffering. And as intelligent human beings, we should be able to tell ourselves that this is a reality and then gather our forces together to really focus and celebrate a day of peace.
라서 이니 다다 가서 이니 되게 예스 다동야 되는 알아서 그 빼도 쳐서 이니 톡조보 용약 이니 다 알아서 그 빼도 쳐서 이니 튼지 망고 중요 살았더래 이니 다 알아서 그직 이니 쟁게 자야다 녀게 사야다 이니 대서 그 치지jen도 그 난게 sem바 좁은 난거 근데 소다 다야 다다 망고 살았더니 내양 고갑대 까금에
So Rinpoche says he hopes that you have already had a wonderful day. He thinks that the day ahead will be equally wonderful. He thinks that there is more visual treats, there's more sensory entertainment coming up. He doesn't want to hold the stage away from what is coming. And so he wants to wish everyone greetings one more time.
얘는 여기도 찍혀야지 되는가 삼성 내는 알아서 미 망보 되는가 좀 미사르바들의 용행 알았더니 라고도 망보치 코란서 때네 드나타 애니 철직 용네 부다가리나 철직 용네 되네 코란게 셈발은 여바시웨탑 나랑 그 메셀 때는 유도 정성 생애들에 되는 가서 다 예보고 밑에 되는 셀랑회 용어도 다 르모니 들려줬던데 망보 근데 철직 용이 양절 되는 가서 마용 탑에 받는 용도 됐는데 진짜 대탐지 되는 지금 가서 산지에다 장철선 받아서 그 진럽게 매망보로 팬 토고 여사래 근데 마음 받아서 소수게 얘네 지금 가서 다 강엘당 직 드르기 때문에 샘는 용사한테 여제돼서 되는 비다가리노라 팩 근데 가서 때 되는 가서 가서 때 지금 가서 되는 용라도서 탐지 파 야제네 근데 러러 제진의 때 시대에 가서 샘시와지 야나 너네 팬토 망고 용어도 될라 다다 마서 아니 미 망고 그랬더니 냠용 토는 알아 시에도 근데 때나게 했더니 제 상말에 했더니 가서 되게 토리 야로나 도대체
Rinpoche also wanted to share this concluding thought that he had interactions, talks with people who had come to the garden, some of them perhaps for the first time, and he feels so gratified when he hears from them. They say that when they come to this place, they feel a sense of peace. And he's hearing this from persons who are coming here for the first time. He's hearing this from people who have come up from far distance. He's hearing this from people who have come here again and again. And hearing this gives Rinpoche great encouragement. He wants to share this concluding message that if any one of you, if at any time you feel strife, if you feel a little bit unhappy, if you feel that you want a place of quiet to bring about some kind of mental peace, please come to the Buddha Garden here. Spend some quiet time here. Spend some time contemplating, meditating. He hopes that it will bring you peace of mind. Thank you so much.